story is about love and death. And as you've noticed, most of the people in it are not young. The youngest people, there's 14. So all of us are of our age, we're facing death. And it's something that people don't talk about, though it actually is on everybody's mind. And it's something that actually concerns me very, very much, because it just does, because I'm 70. So how many years have I got left? Not that many. And suddenly it's upon you, you know. And so, and it's the question, are we facing oblivion? Is there life after death? If so, what form? And as you saw with that conversation round the table, with the women round the table, that wasn't, I mean, it was prompted by me in as much that I asked them to talk about it. But believe you me, everybody's thought about it. So you've got that on the one side, so you've got the widow and her bereavement as the kind of bedrock of the film. But on the other element of it, which is made more poignant and made more important by death, is the idea of love. Because if we're facing oblivion, which is at worst, at best we're facing the end of our own physical lives and probably our own individual identities. Love becomes more important because, as Maxine said, you've only got one chance at all this. And so that kind of puts the main marriage and the peripheral marriage, the other one, into context. So we came up with this dramatic idea. We also realized that what takes time is setups. And also, what takes time is writing. But so we decided that that's not the only reason that we decided not to write. We decided it would be improvised. Because in that way you could investigate very minute areas of experience, which is what you saw in the last film, in considerable detail, in a way that would be possible, but would be very difficult to do as a writer. So we did this film. And I knew from the very first scene we did that it was going to work, because it was so emotionally strong. And it cost 2,000 quid, and we shot it in, I think, 4 days. And it was shown at the Curzon Soho as a special one-off thing. It went to various festivals. We then thought, okay, we can do it. We know what we're doing. We'll take the same principle of improvisation and very simple takes, but we'll make it more sophisticated. And we did the next film, which was Late September, which is which has maybe 7 or 8 different characters, which also investigated marriage. And now we've done this as a third and last of a trilogy that's shot in Kent, which is where I come from. And everybody's friends, except that sometimes we get friends of friends. And the crew is, actually the director of photography was a friend, and everybody else was. Actually 2 people from here. The editor was from here, and one of the camera assistants was from here. So I know how it goes now. We hired 2 houses. We live there, we shoot there, we shoot other places obviously, and we all eat together at night. And those that drink probably far too much at night. And we pay people that need to be paid and pay people that don't pay people that don't. The better we know them, the less money they get. And it's actually a party, really, given by John and Anna every 3 years. So the money goes on hiring the house, on food. Obviously, we pay the editor, and the gear costs money, and so on and so forth. And the crew members that we don't know, we pay. Setup time is what takes time on film. Also, if you're doing if you're improvising, it's very hard to cut the film halfway through and join up, because it's not like you've got a text where you can say, okay, and we're going to cut on this word or this sentence. I mean, it is possible, but we've thought about it. We've never done it. So what it is, each scene is like a happening. It either works or it doesn't work. And so if it works first go, that's it. We finish. And some of them did work first go. The one with Maxine and Ed in the boat, that was it. Boom. Thank God. And they knew that it was my cousin's boat. It's a big family thing. And I told him he was going to bang on. I waved him in to bang on the thing, but they didn't know quite. They sort of knew, but didn't really know, So they were kind of very much taken by surprise. So sometimes, say the women around the table, that was much more complicated, because it's the first time we'd done four people talking, and it needed to be orchestrated. But it's quite difficult to orchestrate. But the interesting thing is that all those women, except for one, are writers as well as actors. So when they're improvising, they've got one side of their brain is actually the talk, and the other side, especially with Anna, is where is this thing going? So that they can think, okay, it's time to shift it. And that took, I think, 5 or 6 goes. Which the cameraman was extremely thankful for, because he was quite nervous about it, which is understandable, because who knows who's going to talk next. And all he had to do, what I had to do with him is to say, okay, David, don't be nervous, don't try and follow the action, set up a rhythm that you can't repeat. So we set a track, so you can go backwards and forwards once, and that's it, with a different pan, obviously, and try and pace yourself to actually set up a rhythm that's complementary to that rhythm. Now, when directing that, what you're doing is trying to stop repetition and trying to keep it dramatic, so that you have to make sure you know what the subtext is the whole time, and that, when I gave direction, it's quickly to say, okay, we kind of drifted off there. Let's not. Or, for instance, more interestingly, in the conversation between Maxine and Jack, where that one we did maybe 5 or 6 times, and it got better and better as we realised that they were very old friends, had talked about all this stuff, love affairs, etc., a million times. So it was critical that they weren't trying to explain stuff for the audience. In fact, it didn't matter if the audience didn't get it, because but you'd figure it out. So what my work was to say, okay, don't say that. You know it. You know exactly what he's going to say. It's just how you deal with it is important. You know he's had an affair. You know he's lost his heart. He always does, etc., etc., etc. And it just, once that we realised that, then it got more and more and more taught and better. But we have to do long takes. Though actually, our next film, I'm quite tempted not to do short takes, but to actually have a longer scene broken up into sections, which we've not really done yet, except maybe the show at the end, which is actually quite a few scenes, isn't it? The day that we shoot the last shot on the last film, I start thinking of the next film. And I have notebooks. They're in my bag there. I can show you one. And I'm quite meticulous about the date and so forth, but I scribble. And I just put down ideas in this notebook. And it slowly, the whole concept gels. And this takes sometime maybe 2 years. And I do it because I'm teaching stuff, and before when I had, when the children were younger, day was taken up and all the rest of it. So in the end, what happens, I go through these, maybe I got it after 2 or 3 years. I'm doing it now. I've got maybe 15 notebooks, quite big notebooks. I go through those, see what's complete rubbish. A lot of it's just saying the same old nonsense again and again and again. But then, there are developments, there are scenes, there's concepts, there's approaches and so forth, there's characters. I go through those, then mark them up and then I go through all the marked up ones and put it all on cards. Cards for scenes and cards for more conceptual. And then I go through the cards, and then I surprise and horrify Anna, who says, "You've been doing this for the last 3 years, John, this is terrible, and you expect us to make a film next week. What are you going to do?" Oh. And she and I, but she especially, we put it in say I've got a quarter of it or half of it or something, then we start to kind of stop waffling like I do and being airy-fairy like I am, and actually think, what is the bloody film about? What are the scenes? And we get together and we just hammer it through. My advice would be, in this day and age, unless you're an amazing hustler and that's your kind of prime gift, don't look for money. Do it yourselves, because it's all falling apart at the moment. Anything's possible. There's something quite wrong at the basis of film production at the moment. And I think that stems from the financing, which is all right through Europe. It comes from state-funded bureaucratic bodies who know pretty much nothing about film except what was successful yesterday. So that's what they're looking for. And it's becoming more and more homogeneous and narrow. And it's more and more with who you are and the stars, etc., etc. And films can be now made remarkably cheaply, of a high quality. And I'm an example of that. There we have a film in the West End that people probably won't even notice, and it cost 10 grand, which is an absurd sum of money. And even if we paid everybody properly, it would only cost 50, which is still an absurd sum of money. And it's full-length feature, scope, music, everything. So why bother? I mean, we have a website, where I wrote a thing called the Belgrade Manifesto about 5 or 6 years ago, which talked about all this. And the phrase we came up with, we were making films without permission. And we are. And it's quite scary because nobody said, yes, John, this is going to be a fantastic idea, it's going to work. When you're looking, you think, the only person that thinks it will or won't work, any person responsible, is us. Now, more interestingly than that, once you start making films for a bureaucratic body, once they're the funders, you subconsciously or even consciously start to make films for their taste. So when I thought that our next film, which is the film after this one, is going to be much more in the realms of dream, I thought, I don't know how to do it. Now, I'm, as you know, quite a serious cineast. I know stuff. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of films. I know the history of cinema. But I didn't know how to do it because I'd never seriously thought about how to do that sort of films because it had been not possible. But now it is possible because I can do what the hell I like. And so it was a degree of self-censorship. So I would say to young people, unless you're a hustler, just do it. Hustlers find their way.